Azurlatch is slowly going on a downhill spiral. Just a week ago, Azurlatch dropped part 1 of a refresh update for Sae, and just the other day, as I'm recording this, they dropped part 2 of the Sae Refresh update. And now that the entirety of the Sae Refresh update has finally come out, I can safely say that the future of Azurlatch has me seriously worried now. Now, when they had first announced that they were going to be doing a refresh of Sae, I was extremely confused, as I personally thought that Sae was just fine as is. Like, the only thing about him that needed some changing in my opinion was his perfect touch, but even then, it was still fine. So I was really scared that they were going to do some unnecessary changes to his kit, but when the update actually came out, I was happily surprised. They ended up changing his T special, where instead of just giving you a dash, you gain a whole new mode, changing how most of your moves work. And to be honest, it was actually pretty cool. This new mode was called Reflex mode, and when you're in it, it changed perfect touch, or beautiful destruction, whatever you want to call it now, to where instead of doing a heel flick, you would instead do a dash, giving you insane distance. Your nutmeg in Reflex mode would just be replaced with Sae's old T special, and your curve shot would turn into a straight shot, with it being similar to Bachira's bond shot. Other notable changes that they added to Sae were that if you were close to a teammate and you used magic pass, it would turn into a grass cutter with the ball going to their feet. Along with that, they added a new shot to Sae's awakening, where if the ball was in the air near you, you could volley it with curve shot and turn it into a powerful straight shot. Now, of course, as with every Azurlatch update, there's always going to be some bugs. And with Sae, he had some really tedious ones. If you were to score with Reflex mode on, you wouldn't have your flow be drained at all, leading to players abusing it. There was a visual bug where the mode you were on wouldn't properly show, meaning you could be on logic mode, but the game would tell you that you were on Reflex mode, which, by the way, that bug in particular has messed me up so many times to the point I didn't have fun using his mode half the time. Yukimiya had a bug involving his T special and his gyro shot. Now, how you do it exactly, I don't know the specifics of, but what I do know is that it allowed players to score from half the field, which is just insane. As well as the game's performance just got increasingly worse. Now, I personally haven't experienced too many frame drops, but I have seen many people get underneath 30 FPS starting this update. Along with this, the horrendous ping issues this game already has got worse, as I used to get pretty consistent ping, but ever since this update, I've been ping spiking like fucking crazy. Now, apparently these two issues stem from the new ball physics / ball VFX. Now, how true that is, I don't know, but I pray they fix the root of these issues soon, as they make the game borderline unplayable. Now, aside from all those issues that I've just mentioned, I personally thought that the update was still fine. Good even. And to be honest, it made me quite excited to see what they would add in part 2 of the update. But sadly, I wouldn't be making this video if part 2 of the update was good. To be honest, it was quite mediocre, if not bad. To start off with my biggest criticism, I really dislike the new perfect touch that they added. What I mean by that is that they added a new variant to Sae's perfect touch, where if you're holding S or W, you'll basically just get Bachira's step overs. Now, the reason why I hate this new variant is because I always hold W whenever I'm using a movement skill. Whether it be Kaiser's off the ball skill, Isagi's Naruhaya footwork skill, whatever movement skill it may be, I still hold W for it. And I'm willing to bet that a good portion of you guys watching this do the same as well. And I don't know about you guys, but I personally just don't like the way the new variant works. It's incredibly boring and unfun, to be honest, in comparison to Sae's original perfect touch. And if I don't like the new variant, I for sure don't want to use it every single time I pop perfect touch just because I hold W out of habit. Now, you can still use the old version of perfect touch if you hold A or D, but that's where another one of my issues with this update comes from. And that being, this new variant was just unneeded. For starters, having to hold A or D before I use perfect touch just to use the original version feels super weird to do, as well as it's incredibly inconvenient in comparison to before this new variant was added. And to be honest, I don't think many people wanted perfect touch to have a new variant at all. If anything, people just wanted the heel flick part of it to be slightly faster so it wouldn't be as easy to intercept. And even then, most people would just like to use the first part of perfect touch since it was a good movement skill even without the second part. So all in all, not only was it incredibly unneeded, nobody even wanted it. Now, the last thing I'm gonna say is a little bit of nitpicking on my part, but it's still an issue I have with it regardless. And that being that they just used the same animation that Bachira has for step overs. Like, they could have at least given this new variant some new animations, but no, they just reused the same animation, which just makes it even more boring to use. Now, I wish that this new variant of perfect touch was my only complaint, but sadly, it's not. Another issue I had with this update was the overtime awakening. This again is something that didn't need to be changed at all. The new overtime awakening is just very ugly to look at in comparison to the old one, and I feel like it's because the VFX are more red than pink. And I have the same issue with the new VFX on Cross Alaska, where it also looks a bit too red for my liking, to the point where it just looks ugly to look at. Now, Sae wasn't the only bad part about these updates, as my second biggest issue in them was the balancing. Now, I want to preface that I'm not a competitive player at all, so maybe to you more calm players these balance changes make sense to you, but to me, an average Joe, they're awful at times. First, they gave Rin another awakening shot, which just makes him even more tedious to go against. Now, it can either be a buff or nerf depending on how you use it, but the fact he even has another addition to his awakening just makes me roll my eyes. Like, I seriously think that they just need to leave Rin alone for now. Secondly, they nerfed Neo Isagi even more, making him the worst out in the game at this point. His Ramdooner skill goes absolutely nowhere if you use it on the ball. They took away the iframes on that move as well. His steel variant for meta burst point doesn't go for iframes anymore, along with increasing its cooldown by 5 seconds, and his shot move got nerfed to the ground with them trying to revive it by increasing its power by 8, whatever that means. They constantly rebalance Shido to the point where I can't even tell if he gets buffed or nerfed at this point. The only thing I do know is that they gave Shido the ability to use Dragon Drive without being in Awakening if he uses Draconic Rush after being passed by a Sae using Magic Pass, which if you have even half a brain, you'd know how stupidly broken it is to be able to use an Awakening move in your base. And going back to Sae, I'm incredibly surprised they released him in the state he's in, because if you're even half decent at the game, you could absolutely dominate servers with Sae. His Reflex Perfect Touch gave you insane distance with little downside aside from end lag. The first part of Perfect Touch used to have counter frames. His Nutmeg in Reflex mode could force counter you if the person using him landed it. Along with this, you can use his new shot in Awakening twice, meaning Sae now has 3 Awakening shots. So all in all, going against a Sae just felt and still feels insanely unfun at times, as you can get punished by simply being near one. This is mainly because it's hard to tell what mode a Sae user is in, which forces players to be wary of them, as you don't know if they're going to be able to force Nutmeg you or not. And finally, they yet again remove volleys from the game, which is just awesome. Nice, man. Anyways, anytime I see the balance changes in these updates, I'm more often than not just left confused, as some of them make zero sense, such as nerfing Kaiser's Kaiser Impact Strike by 2.5%. Like, what the hell was that? And it feels like for balancing, they just blindly throw darts at a dartboard for them. As well as the overall quality for updates have gone downhill ever since Boss Studio bought the game. The animations now just don't have the same character / charm the older animations have, and along with the balancing being abhorrent, I feel as though it's all because of the game's new update schedule. It feels like Boss Studio really wants to keep a weekly / bi-weekly update schedule, as it gives them the most consistent players, not caring about the actual quality of the updates. This is made very clear, as many people want the old monthly update schedule back, according to a poll they made on Discord, yet they have still stuck with the weekly schedule since. Because of the fact they have a weekly / bi-weekly update schedule, it allows them to release half-assed or unfinished updates, such as this Sae one, and say that it's part 1 of an update, or add stuff to a character in another update to fluff up the update, which is why I feel like the balancing is so bad at times. They they just randomly pick stuff to fluff up the update because they have no extra content. When the old dev team was still around, updates felt like they actually had content to them. They never once felt half-assed, although they did have plenty of bugs. This was because of how long they were able to work on updates. These new devs have very little time to work on updates as they have to push out content weekly, forcing them to release stuff that's less than subpar. Using this Sae Refresh as an example, the amount of content that they released in part 2 in comparison to part 1 was so little that they should have just taken their time on the update to release it all at once to ensure higher quality. But because they have a weekly schedule to keep up, they released the refresh unfinished, using the unfinished parts of it as quote-unquote content for next week. As well as some of the content, like I said, is just fluff at times, with a good portion of things being unneeded, which leaves the devs to use their time on things that shouldn't be a priority. Like the effort that could have gone towards a new style was instead used on Sae's new overtime animation, which is just upsetting. I personally think that bi-weekly quality of life updates plus monthly content-filled updates would be much better for the game than weekly updates. Anyways, those are most of my thoughts, I think, so if you see me on TikTok, please subscribe as I'll probably be posting on here more, and if you haven't, please check out my TikTok as I'm way more active on there. Anyways, that's it for me. See ya.